Okay, well. Sure, let me know when you're there and we'll bring the meeting to order.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello.
What?
Mr. Dan.
Yes.
Are we good to go?
Yes.
Okay, I will bring this meeting. Let's see, this is a special meeting of the Urban Growth Boundary Sphere of Influence Committee. It is Wednesday, December 13th, just after 4 p.m. Bring it to order. And if you will join me and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. And can we have a roll call, please? Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
I usually have this as chicken scratches on my agenda.
Committee member Jabris.
Here.
Committee member Frios.
Here.
Committee member Maderos.
Here.
Committee member Morris Lopez.
Here.
And Chair Mark Tarana.
Here. Okay, moving right along. All right. So review and discuss. Council resolution. I think we're all familiar with the council resolution. I don't know if we need to read that. We've got a couple of, I guess, a couple of primary objectives as we move forward with the committee. And those, I believe, are to work on a memo of agreement or understanding with the county regarding the administration of land use planning, development, what have you, within the boundary that we designated for the planning area. And then we also need to continue our conversation about the and whether or not we need an ordinance to accompany the urban growth boundary and what that will consist of. And that will, I think, that primarily will impact the general plan and the city's general plan and the drive a number of necessary updates and revisions to the general plan. Does that make sense? I would like to start with the planning area, unless anybody has something else they'd like to start with or discuss. Any questions? How are you guys all doing? We haven't met for a little while, but I feel like we've been pretty productive. We got all three of our boundaries through the city council, yes. So there's an 11 by 17 map. I guess there's a little bit of missing at the top there. The boundary didn't continue through exactly on the print here, but I think we can all see it reasonably well. And we really need to talk about what what we'd like to see from the county and working with the county as far as treatment of the properties within that boundary. I know I've given it a lot of thought. Dan and I have spoken about it. I don't know how much you guys individually have discussed it or thought about it. But I don't want to monopolize here. If anybody has any comments or thoughts, or I can just sort of throw out where my thinking took me with this.
Chair, did you want to put that on the screen so the?
That'd be lovely.
can see it? Okay, we can do that.
So, okay, so we're gonna get that to a shared screen share, I guess. Working on. Oh,
So we'll find it.
and we're, I don't know. We operate, obviously, have operated less formally than the council has. So if anybody's got questions, just feel free to sort of interrupt, jump in and throw them out there. Do we have any attendees online?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do. Oh, I'm sorry. I see 6, it looks like. Welcome to you guys in the ether out there.
Question.
Yes,
Chair.
ma'am.
Yes, since it is a special meeting, do we do public comment now or later?
Oh, that's a great question. It wasn't actually on the,
Oh, after this.
okay, I guess we're doing it after the discussion. Since public comment is, because it's a special meeting, comment is restricted to items on the agenda. We might as well, I mean, we can address it at the agenda items, but I'll open it up after. Thank you for bringing that up.
If I may go first, Chair
Yeah.
Montana, I guess my first initial comment and disclosure, I haven't spoken to anyone about it.
Uh-huh.
So this is just kind of off the cuff right now, looking at it. So the next step is then presenting our planning area to the county, and it would be a memorandum of agreement is what we're shooting for. I think for me, I'd be interested to find out the details of all the properties within our proposed planning area boundary. If there's any specifics like Williamson Act properties, potential, developments, maybe that they know about, property owners that are thinking about or have, issued or requested permits for any development. Just kind of get us up to speed what's going on in that area. Thank you.
Councilmember Lopez, Committee Member Lopez, I'm also aware that there is work being done by the preservation, the land use
Land trust.
land trust preservation folks. And I got wind today from the county that they have a grant to look at preserving open space in a lot of these properties. So there's other interests to protect and conserve as well.
Yeah, that potentially presents a neat opportunity to work in conjunction. So I'm sorry, you wanted the current status of any properties at current sort of development status,
Development, just in
and then
general.
you wanted like Williamson Act.
Right, and then just what city manager has just revealed is really pertinent, I think. Because I know I'd heard or read recently, they did a different land trust, did the 4,500 or maybe 9,000 acres, I'm not sure, in Pisces with the Salachi family. They just preserved that, they went into an agreement, but it wasn't.
How many acres?
I want to say the number 9,000 pops up into my head.
Wow.
Salachi. Actually, it was over by Pisces. They said it went.
That's what the report, I saw
read
it on Facebook or something.
So it's the one that's on the east of our county.
Yes.
Yeah, it's huge. Did you read it also?
I skimmed it.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
parts of it.
South.
Yeah, southeast. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was on, I saw something there too.
And who'd you say the land trust was? San Benito land trust, agricultural land trust?
No, it was a different one, and I can't recall the name. It was
It was Big Sur,
no, that doesn't ring a bell.
Trust for Public Lands.
I'm not sure. It was not done. yet.
Sir, excuse me, Chair, in order for our public to be able to hear, if you can please use your mics.
Oh.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay. David, any initial thoughts?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Um, Scott,
Well,
sorry.
being that you asked,
Yeah.
you know, it's been a while.
Mhm.
And maybe a recap of where we at and where we can go with it, where we need to go with this. According to our instructions or what we need to review, basically, it's in our agenda. And so why don't we just go down the road and line here and answer any questions that might come up as far as discussing. But I'm thinking we have a resolution apparently that has been approved through city council
Yes.
that we have to review and agree to, or what? I mean, where are we with all this as far as,
Okay, so
so? Yeah.
sure,
That's my question.
you got it.
Sorry. You're gonna get in trouble. The resolution of intent, 2023-71 was approved November 14th by the city council, and it established the proposed sphere of influence and urban growth boundary that this committee recommended. So that work is done, and that will come with a community plan and subsequent application to LAFCO. Was working on a staff report to the council today where we have some backup information in that report that describes the process. We have to do a municipal services review, but that should be quite simple because the political boundary and the sphere of influence are the same. So we're obviously able to serve our current political boundaries. So it should move through LAFCO fairly quickly. There's a CEQA process involved as well. But the second matter on the agenda tonight is a proposal from ENC to modify that community plan, because when we drafted it in 2022, we had a sphere of influence that stretched out towards the south, towards the cement plant in that area. So ENC has come back with a proposal to change that to pretty much focus on infill and to demonstrate to the state how we can meet our regional housing needs using infill properties. And it's pretty, that's seemingly simple because it's less than 100 homes, and we have the 70 Muckalemme and other potential properties that can be developed. So with that, the work that's left for this committee to do currently is to define the relationship between the city and the county and how properties will be developed. And I've had conversations with several of you about different models in different jurisdictions, and also the idea, I think, committee member DeVries and I were talking about different layers of commitment that the county would have depending on how far the property was from our city boundaries. So Dan, maybe you want to elaborate on that idea, but it's there'll be in some counties, it's actually an ordinance that it gets established for 4 years and then reconsidered every 4 years about the city and county relationship. In this case, we were talking more of a memorandum of agreement between the city and the county that would expire at a different term, maybe a 20-year term or 30-year term. So it depends. It's up to the city what you guys want to recommend to the council, and then that becomes policy. So that's also part of subject to CEQA review as well. But this is a pretty big swath of properties compared to other grabs. So I don't know. Dan had the most to say. I don't know, Chair, if you want to start with Dan.
One moment. I just want to make sure, David, that was that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Covered
Yeah,
what you were looking
trying to get my feet wet here as far as where we're gonna go from there. And I believe that's your conversation that we need to bring up before this committee.
Yeah.
And how we're gonna step into that. I'd like to find out where we're gonna go with that, and let's just go with that right now.
Okay.
And not confuse myself anymore.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you, staff.
okay. So do you want to, Scott, did you want to speak, or Dan, you want to talk about what city manager alluded to there?
Sure. I'm gonna keep this purposefully broad. And just talk kind of in generalities, and then I think hopefully as the conversation progresses amongst us five, we can start bringing it into focus. But along those lines, it just seems to me intuitively and commonsensically, when we're talking about, which is the overarching heading for this, what do we do? So we've drawn an urban growth boundary line. But then what happens when the county receives applications for projects and developments that are on the other side of that line? Well, again, just kind of somewhat commonsensically, it seems that the closer that proposed development is to our front door, the more we care. And that's when I say the more we care, obviously we're talking about the level of control or input or involvement that the city of San Juan Bautista would want to maintain as a jurisdiction, as a city, on these developments that occur outside of our city limits, which is also our growth boundary. So if that's true, and I think it probably is, that the closer something is proposed to us, the more we care, then it also stands to reason that the converse is true, that therefore the further away something is proposed within our planning area, but further away from the city limits and the growth boundary, perhaps the lesser amount of control would be wanted or desired or warranted. So then we have, if you can accept those underlying premises, then right around the city limits, we care a lot. And then query whether perhaps then there's kind of an intermediate zone where we care, but not as much as we do if it's right on our doorstep. And then there's the further reaches of still within the planning area, still matters to us, but we don't need to be as involved as we would if something was being proposed, really close to our city limits, like underneath the mission or so forth. So if all of those kinds of ideas make some sense, then the follow-up questions, like I said, bringing this thing into focus might be, if the closer something is proposed to us, the more we care. Well, what does caring and input and control, what do those things look like as a practical matter? And that would, presumably be the negotiations that the city would get into with the county. And you'd have to be particular about it and specific and say, okay, if it happens within this area, we want to be lead agency, for example. We want to have that application processed through the city of San Juan and maybe ultimately reviewable by the county through its board of supervisors. But San Juan Bautista wants to be out in front of that. We want a seat at that table. And then in that intermediate zone, maybe we still want to participate, but not as much. And then on the outward area, perhaps all we want is to ensure that we get notification of an application for a proposal within our planning area, but it's way out there. And once we receive notification, perhaps we want an opportunity to provide comment on what's being proposed, official comment from the city that the county can then take into consideration as they're processing the application as they otherwise would. So those are kind of the thoughts, I think, that are germane and relevant to a discussion like this. And, Chris and I, when we've been talking about it, and I think we mentioned this previously, or Chris may have at the city council meeting, I can't remember. But the idea would almost be like a concentric circles around the city limits to delineate these tiers. Tier 1 would be the most important, would be the thing that which we want the most input on, because that really is going to affect us. Tier 2, medium. Tier 3, not so much. So that's kind of a visualization of the framework that we were discussing, that the city manager alluded to. And it seems to make some sense to me anyway, but happy to hear what other people think.
Does that make sense? How he was describing it? To that reasonably clear? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. The
Okay.
closer the proximity to us, the more concern and input. And we would want to jockey to be a lead agency, if not equal with the city or the county in this case.
Right.
My other thought about it is when you talked about the different tiers, the proximity issue is pretty clear. But also, what about the types of development? Like, this project versus maybe something that's gonna be more dense or larger in size, footprint. That might be something we wanna look at too.
Sure, having it be relating to proximity as well as scope.
Scope.
Okay.
size, Density.
Sure, David?
Yeah, and what is our annexation process? Why can't we look at that? Because just because we're annexing, what is it that we are going to annex? Is it just for development? It could be for open space too as well. I mean, where we go with our city limits, let's say, and we want to develop and grow. That's one way of defining what we want within the city limits. And it could be open space, could be agriculture, it could be forest, I don't know. But I'm just saying, isn't that part of the process that's before us that we can use? And if we're going to use them, how does that connect to what we're trying to do today when it comes to a planning area? Because we have tools, and right now we're trying to develop a new tool, which is the planning area. And how do we merge the two together to make sure that they sync in the direction we want to go? Because maybe instead of just watching out certain areas that's not being annexed but close to us, maybe the best thing we need to do is to annex. Is that a choice that we have? Is that going to be pertinent to how we move forward as far as we grow?
Sure. So I guess I have a question from that. It's not a question I can answer. I understood that annexation was initiated by the property owner. Is that not the case? It's not that we say, hey, we want to annex this and we go ahead and annex it. I believe it has to be initiated by the property owner. So can anybody help me with that answer? Answer that.
Honestly, I'm not sure,
Okay.
if the city can do that themselves. For municipal reasons, we annexed, the water tank and those properties specifically for our utility. So, I think it could be either.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Okay.
most commonly you see it instigated by a landowner.
Okay.
Because what does annexation get you? It gets you sewer and water, basically. That's what they're looking for is sewer hookups and then municipal water. But I think there's a fundamental, and this has come up a lot, I think for Scott and I on this committee at the very beginning, and that is seeing annexation as a tool or a means by which you can protect. And I would submit that annexation, it's the other way around. By annexing something, you're pretty much guaranteeing that there's going to be development on that which you annex. Otherwise, why is it being annexed? Why are you agreeing to provide sewer and water to that area with an annexation if it's not going to be developed? So instead of protection is the aim, then there are far better ways to achieve that, such as those things that we're talking about through the land trust, through an urban growth boundary, etc. Which I want to just do a quick timeout here. Just to tell the city manager, Don, I CC'd you on an email back to Ariel at the county.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay. Did you kind of get the import of that? They're starting up, because I had talked with Ariel a while ago about something called a TDC program, which stands for Transfer Development Credits. And transfer development credits are a really kind of cool theory, but that's been really difficult to implement. Anywhere it's been tried, a couple of places have done it successfully. And I worked on that TDC program for years when I was over at the county, and we kind of got hung up in the details, and they're apparently going to take another run at it. And I had told Ariel and Abraham months ago that if you guys ever do that, I'm interested, because I think it's a really, really great idea. What it does is it sends development rights. So let's take agricultural productive, which is a lot of what surrounds San Juan Bautista, especially going that way. AP has a density of 1 unit per 5 acres. So that means if you own 45 acres, you can theoretically build 9 houses on that. So if you want to, and let's say that 45 acres is owned by Farmer Jones. Farmer Jones, if he wants to, can sell the right, those 9 house, right, the right to build 9 houses, he can sell those as credits on an open market. You're creating a market for credits. And then somebody somewhere else in the county who wants to increase his or her density, they only can do 1 and 5. But if they buy Farmer Jones's 9, now they can do 9 more than they would otherwise be allowed to do under their zoning. So it's a way of kind of manipulating the landscape to protect what you want to protect, but build where you want to build by an open market system. And a guy named Ken Giamelli, he did that with a tract out here, kind of off of Prescott, the old San Juan, whatever they call that road that goes by what's that road called? San Justo? Yeah, he bought this silver ranch. And he stripped it of its development rights. How do you do that? You do that with an agricultural open space easement. So now that land can never be developed. And he picked up, I don't know how many credits doing that, and he applied them when he was doing the approvals for the San Juan Oaks development. So that's how we increased density that way. So anyway, all of this stuff is starting to happen. The land trust, San Bernardino Agricultural Land Trust is interested. There's a lot of ways to protect and preserve the ag land around San Juan Bautista, and they're pretty exciting to take place. But I would, like I said, I would submit that doing an annexation is not a way to protect anything.
Okay. I would generally, I would agree that the challenge with the annexation is you are giving them rights to the sewer and water. And when at the end of the day, that's what somebody doing large scale housing development, that's all they care about from the city. They want sewer and water. So we give it to them by right, by bringing it in. It's much easier to then alter or change the zoning once they become a part of the city, once they're annexed. If we sort of hold them at arm's length, it gives us that extra layer of protection. I think that was a big part of the intent here.
Okay, so
Not. Go ahead.
I hear where you're going with that.
Sure.
It sounds good. I understand the complexity of that as well. But also too, when we think of city limit,
Mhm.
is that only able to move that city limit through annexation, or what are the other processes that will allow that to move?
Yeah, it's annexation.
You can't just
No.
say, oh, now we're going to put the city limits across this property line instead of here. So it's going to be the annexation process.
Through that.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's what I'm trying to bring to the surface here.
gotcha.
Those are the tools.
Yeah.
So we got that. We understand that. And so where do we go from here? Okay, now we're outside of the urban growth boundary. And so far we've heard some of the tools,
Mhm.
and I'm sure there's a lot more
Well, so
as far as land protection
sure.
and what you call sensible and responsible growth.
Sure.
Right.
So one place to maybe differentiate, and maybe I should have expounded on this a little earlier. The where I think we're going to go with the urban growth boundary, and that's for us as a group to decide or to suggest to the council who will decide, is an ordinance that governs that dictates sort of how it works, how it operates, and the annexation limitations, expectations would be in that ordinance. Does that make sense? So it isn't a function of the planning area. It's a function, it's more related to the urban growth boundary, which we haven't gotten to yet. Now we can switch gears and talk about that first. I felt, and it was an arbitrary decision on my part to focus on the planning area first, in part because it is, I think we're going to have a lot more back and forth over that because we have to interact with the county. That's all. So, okay.
And wouldn't that, Chair, be the necessary initial step anyway,
What's that?
as outlining the area that we want to have further control or stake in by listing what our planning area, our desired planning area is. You wouldn't go the resolution route first, you have to define the map, the area, and then speak from that.
No, I mean, I think they're independent. The urban growth boundary defines it as that you're either inside or outside that. And the ordinance sort of regulating that, it just dictates how you as an individual or a property owner would interact with that boundary. And so I think they're really two separate things. This is defining how we are going to interact with the county. Because at the end of the day, the county gets to decide what gets done on the county lands. So we're asking them, we're trying to decide, what we're going to ask them to allow us to either do or regulate, or, how that interaction is going to, and it could be as simple as, clearly define that, notification, or it could be asking them to let us be the lead agency for any kind of development. And I think we need to define a list of sort of what are the triggers that, cause this to come into play. It's not just as simple as a building application. I think we're talking also about land use designation changes. Somebody wants to, change something from ag to commercial or industrial. We likewise want to be involved in that conversation and that process. And then, or subdivisions, if somebody wants to subdivide ag parcels or, anything out there, for whatever reason they state, we want to be in, I think that's another thing that we want to be a party to. We're not simply talking about a building permits, but anyway.
Is it legally possible for us to be the lead agency in a county development?
If they agree to it.
Yeah, we believe so. It happens elsewhere. And when that racetrack project sort of materialized a few years ago, the F1 track, the county the county told them outright, we don't want anything, you're going to have to go talk to San Juan Bautista.
Because it is in our sphere of influence.
It was, but
current.
it wasn't. It was on county land. The project was 100% on county land and was not something that we would, it was outside. And they just said, they didn't want anything to do with it. They recognized that it was,
Well, they have any water, but
Yeah.
I just with our limited staff, I mean, really, how much more are we gonna, how much more can they do? If they're gonna deal with it, they're gonna deal with the development outside. If our staff is going to deal with a development outside the city limits, I just don't see how they're gonna get the time.
Well, no, I mean, that's that reality hits you right in the face first thing.
Yeah.
And but here's the other reality is that if you go into the county tomorrow with an application all filled out, and it's an application for doing anything of any moment, and by that I mean a subdivision of 10 or more units or some kind of commercial building, they're going to, Ariel or Abraham or Michael Kelly, one of those guys are going to say, okay, that's nice. And then very quickly the conversation is going to turn to, who do you want to hire? Or the county is going to hire an outside planning firm to do to process this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you applicant are going to have to reimburse us for what that firm charges. And they have a list. And you say, well, who would you hire to do that? And they say, well, it's 1, 2, 3, or whatever. And sometimes they even let you have some input into who the county is going to hire to process your application. But the applicant pays for the whole thing. And that's called a reimbursement agreement. And I've done that 4 or 5 times on projects with the county. And the applicant, like I said, ends up paying the whole show, all of those expenses, so the county doesn't end up holding the bag on anything. And then this outside firm does all the work, but they're doing it as if they were the county. So the way something like that might work in the city of San Juan Bautista, if we became a lead agency, we'd say, okay, that's great. Same thing, here's your list, or here's our list of vendors, outside planning firms that can process this thing. They're gonna charge us, the city, you applicant are gonna reimburse that. So the billing is just a pass through. But then when that outside firm prepares documents like staff reports or the environmental document, say it's a mitigated neg deck or it's an EIR or whatever it is, this outside firm is going to prepare that for us, for our city, for our planning commission, for our city manager, for all of that. So it's a way of kind of outsourcing that, because you're absolutely right. There's no way that this our little city hall could handle something
Yeah.
like that.
And I'm also concerned about, bankrolling something like that. We're not a wealthy community. So, you're talking about reimbursement. Our checkbook is not even a quarter the size of the county's. I can see where they can pay up front.
They confront it.
I don't see us being able to front, a multi-million-dollar project.
No, that's a very valid concern too. But you gotta realize it's a concern for the county as well. So the way that they address that concern is to require very sizable deposits up front. And when that deposit, and then they keep the applicant advised as to how the deposit's doing, and it's dwindling. Let's say it's 50 grand or 80 grand deposit. When it gets down to 10 or 20, you can see that on the accounting. And then in the reimbursement agreement, which is, like a 9 or 10 page contract, it says if you get down too low, we're going to demand that you replenish that deposit. And if you don't, work on your application stops until you do. And that tends to motivate people. The intent being, at no time will the county ever be holding the bag or out of pocket fronting money. And it's worked pretty well. Really well.
Don, you were nodding when Dan brought that up. I think you're.
It's interesting because when I hear the term lead agency, I think of the CEQA lead agency, who's going to be the lead agency in the CEQA review. Versus in the community development process. I think back on the Dassel annex, the Dassel subdivision, we had all the time we needed to add conditions to that project, and it's on Mission Vineyard. It's not maybe an immediate concern, is in that intermediate area, but we had plenty of opportunity to add and modify the conditions to that development, and invitations to speak at the hearing and so forth. So there, in that case, Serial Goodspeed was the lead, but the city was a partner.
Awesome.
But in the scenario that Dan just painted, that third party, private party would work for the city, not the developer,
Right.
and therefore allow the city to take the lead. You still have to manage that contract, but I'm not aware currently anyway of a lot of pressure from the unincorporated area or even any developments out there. You guys might know better than I do, but.
Okay, thanks. Any other thoughts? This idea of the concentric circles is one that came up. That doesn't mean we're not saying that there isn't some other alternative. If you guys have some other thoughts or ideas or how to approach it, it just seemed like a logical, if it's way out there.
Yeah.
I want to know, I want to be involved, but I don't necessarily want to be driving the bus.
Right. And
It's sort of the way I looked at it.
I think that, it matters more to us if it's closer than it does if it's far away. I started thinking about that a lot when Scott was talking at that council hearing. Remember, I texted you next year and I said, I know totally where you were coming from on that. Because Scott was saying, like, what do we basically, I'm paraphrasing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're basically saying, what do we care if it's way out here, way out here? Well, not as much, but so what if we just get notice of something like that? But if it's underneath the mission or underneath First Street, we care a little bit more. And how do we express that care? What level of involvement and do we want? And just to kind of follow up on what the city manager said, maybe being the lead agency isn't that, I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's the ultimate expression of we care. And that's the ultimate going out there as far as the amount of control that we want. That's on that end of the continuum. Maybe we don't need that much. I don't know. That's for this committee to deliberate and discuss.
Do you,
I'm
Go ahead,
thinking
please.
What's been discussed right here, that maybe we can look at other cities and see how they've handled the situation. If there is something that resembles what we're doing with the planning area, or even just, sphere of influence, we could look to, other cities close our way that are, trying to preserve like we are, and how do we handle it? What's the agreement? What's the approach?
Hmm. Good.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
true,
Yeah.
conceptually, what do you like the,
I like everything that you've already spoken
Okay.
to, and I think, with annexation, I don't see that as a tool of preservation, I see it as a tool of give me, I want,
okay,
take,
okay,
kind of, I don't know.
sure. So, David, what do you,
Yeah, I mean,
you seem logical?
I'm beginning to. The clarity that's coming into my head right now is getting to be more complex. So, and with good reason, because I think we are talking about tools, aren't we?
Yeah.
And being a lead agent and where we have the power to do anything, and if money is driving force too as well, that's something we need to think about. But also, I think Dan also brought up the fact that, when people come in and they're changing the use of their property.
Yeah.
Or if they're going to develop it, that's when we can step in and say, hey, we're not going to pay for that, you are. And I think those are some of the steps that we need to put into any kind of agreement with the county,
Yeah.
that's where we're going to go.
Yeah.
And so I agree with that.
Okay.
What are they? And one of the things that I'm asking myself is, what do we do with the county right now as far as staff goes? And as far as our council goes, what connections do we have now, and what things are we working on? And what are those tools that we have available to them? Is that something we can roll over into our planning area?
Sure. I think that probably Don should address that. I know you've expressed to me that you feel very good about the working relationships right now with the county planning. Is that correct?
Yeah, since I've been here, actually, and in the early days of this committee, I was asked to look for an MOU between the city that may be 20 or 30 years old, because they do respond to us really well. And as soon as the application is completed, if it's anywhere near us, we get a copy of it. And we have had a few way out on San Juan Highway back in the foothills that were indifferent about. A nursery was proposed out in that area. I don't know what became of it, but we didn't express much interest in that. But thank you for the notice, and we recognize the receipt of it. We haven't had any proposals come to us except for Christopher Ranch, right? They made a request to be annexed into the city. That's the only one that I'm aware of, and they came directly to the city, not to the county.
Yeah, I think that I think part of this is we we need to become a little more sophisticated, and we have a good working relationship. It's good now. If county planning, you have personnel changes, it has not always been that way. I mean, and that's why I'm very concerned about this and feel like we really need a good quality agreement, so that we have we institutionalize it, and it just becomes part of the process for both organizations.
So when we do develop that, do we turn that over to the staff, or and when we do that, are we talking with and working with directly with the county at the same time?
Yeah, I think that what I envision, and we can shift that, but what I envision is that we as a group come up with deal points. Dan calls them deal point.
Yeah, I love deal
Right?
points. Yeah.
He called it deal points. So
Just
we come
big
up with a
picture.
list of,
Don't get lost in the weeds.
right, so we come up with about our deal points where what we think the structure that, looks like. And maybe flesh out some of the, well, I think we start with deal points. And then we initiate a conversation with, Don's already spoken to the county planning. And in fact, suggested that they come to this meeting. I felt it was a little premature. So I think we should get some of the deal points pulled together.
Yeah.
And then we just start that conversation. And, maybe they go, whoa, you guys are crazy. There's no way we're going to do any of this stuff. And maybe they go, yeah, that looks really good. And then we start fleshing out some of the mechanics of it, which is what Scott's talking about, the mechanics of how exactly, what are the timetables for notification? At what point do things get passed back and forth?
Mhm.
What do the contracts look like? There's probably some standard reimbursement agreement, and
Mhm.
those all need to be looked at. And then the county council and the planning commission, or the board of supervisors and the city council, obviously. But I think it's going to be a fairly involved process.
So what's deal number one? What's the most important deal?
Well, I think
Is it a thing or people?
What? I don't understand. What do you mean?
no, I think so deal points would be things like, if it's within this area, we want to be the lead agency. So you would accept for instance, you would accept, and then the mechanics of that would be something like, okay, the county's going to accept the application and they're immediately going to forward it to us and provide that notification to the applicant that there's about this, the memo of understanding, and here's or memo of agreement. Is it agreement or understanding? Agreement, right?
Yeah.
We like memo of agreement.
Jackie
Then
likes
when
agreement.
they go,
Agreement.
there we go. I'm all good.
You're
And then we go. And so and then we start fleshing that out. And then the another deal point would be, I think we're going to have, you spent some time drawing up what I would call value statements. And I think that is part of the introduction to this, right? And I'm sorry that we haven't really talked about that, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does that make sense as a description, as values? They're sort of the values of the community.
Yeah.
It's the values that we're trying, that sort of describe what we're trying to protect.
Yeah, and the other thing too, is it by property or just by area? Is it gonna be, it's gonna be what?
Follow the parcel lines,
Parcel line.
like
Well,
Scott's
by
been saying.
parcel line.
Yeah, Scott's.
Yeah, everything that we
Okay.
have described in this planning
It's not gonna be
area,
a general thing for all properties.
no, it encompasses specific parcels. So the parcel lines are described on the map, and we just follow the parcel map, the parcel lines. I think that's what we have done thus far, and I think we sort of had that understanding that was our.
You all feel better comfortable doing it that way.
By parcel lines?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
have
just
to.
clean. It's just cleaner that way, I think.
and I just. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add something onto that, because this kind of came up in your council meeting too. I would also submit that as to this green line on this map that the city of San Juan came up with, nobody cares. No one at the county will care that San Juan drew a green line somewhere. What they will care about is the next question, which obviously is, okay, that's a nice line. What happens inside that line? Well, it kind of depends. How close is it to the city limits? It's what happens within this line. That's what matters. This line is just us saying an expression of the community of San Juan saying, this is the area we kind of care about, what happens inside of it. And we want to express that care and concern in different ways. But then like someone on the board of supervisors would say, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Okay, so you've identified an area that you care about and you want to have something to say about it. What is it you want to say? How much do you want to say? When do you want to say it? What's the format for saying it? All those things,
And ultimately, just so I understand, as to Scott's point, we can recommend conditions to a development close to our political boundaries, but it's ultimately the Board of Supervisors who's gonna approve or deny those. Unless tier one means consider annexation into the city, which means amending the sphere of influence, the urban growth boundary and annexation, then we truly will be in the driver's seat. So that's the only way we would be in the driver's seat. That's what occurred with Oasis, your neighbors, David.
Yeah,
That was a sphere of influence change, that was the urban growth boundary change and a city boundary change. And a rezone, it was rezoned from ag to residential, so that's a lot of steps to take. And it's not an easy feat to accomplish. But that's
it
ultimately-
just also sounds like with every parcel is gonna be a new deal. If every parcel is gonna be handled differently, because we don't know what's gonna go in there.
Well, but they're not,
within the
they're,
circles, right?
they're,
No, it's in the circles.
yeah, I mean,
Oh, okay, so again, we're getting back to a generalization of the concentric circles, okay.
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
But defined by parcel lines.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
It won't be a perfect circle.
no, yeah, I
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah, the one of them goes way up.
Well,
Bigger because get bigger.
yeah, yeah, and looking at the detail, it gets a little, it may be a little funny looking, but. anyway.
No, I'm not worried about, like you said, I mean, it's just a property, I mean, it's just a line.
Yeah, what happens inside of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don, I wanted to respond a little bit though to what you just said. My vision at least is not that tier one would be synonymous with or an expression of land that we ultimately want to annex and make a part of the city. I think, but I recognize, yeah, you really want to be in the driver's seat. I think that within any of these tier one, tier two, or tier three, because jurisdictionally, the city doesn't own that land, that there would have to be a right of ultimate right of appeal to the San Benito County Board of Supervisors. And I guess the only thing we could hope for as a community is if it went through the San Juan Planning Department or planners working through a vendor, then went to the San Juan Planning Commission, was turned down. Let's say just hypothetically, this hypothetical application, the recommendation in the staff report was, therefore, we don't recommend that this be done. San Juan Planning Commission says no. They appeal to the San Juan City Council says no. And the developer's still unhappy and they have that ultimate right of appeal to the Board of Supervisors. Could the Board of Supervisors say, forget you, San Juan, we're gonna approve it anyway, even though you have made it abundantly clear you don't want this to happen? Yeah, I suppose they could do that, but I'd be pretty hard pressed to think that they would. But I think that's all we can do.
Those are just opinions, right? So the
Yeah.
planning commission and appeal to city council, those are just opinions. They're not-
Advisory almost.
Yeah, advisories.
Mhm.
No, it's not law.
But I guess our hope would be that they'd be given great weight in the deliberations by the board,
So you've just described a possible process
Mhm.
for tier one. I mean, that's what we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
What we would probably
Well,
describe as tier one.
Philosophically, I think it would be applicable to something right on our doorstep and something way over here. The philosophy being San Juan Bautista wants to be able to let you county know how we feel about this.
Mhm.
And ultimately, regardless of the tier, county would be free to say, thank you very much, but we're gonna do something different.
Okay.
And Don, you're familiar with Santa Barbara County. That's exactly this setup with Montecito in Santa Barbara County.
Mhm.
Montecito gets their way 99 times out of 100, but every once in a while the county says, no, we're putting in the roundabout. We don't care what you people say.
Because they have more money than the Vatican. I mean, that's just the bottom line there. I mean, you've got Montecito.
But they don't, but they get goosed by the county.
Yeah, but I know, but and then that county has more money than both of those sources, so. I understand what, and I'm beginning to get a better grasp on the tiers. I'm just seeing a lot more work happening in this little room for everybody. Not only our staff, but our volunteer planning commission and our volunteer city council. And it's hard enough dealing with all these unfunded state mandates that we keep getting jammed down our throat. it's we're increasing workloads for everybody.
Yeah, potentially.
And I get, we just want everybody to know that. So,
Yeah.
you know, future city council members or planning commissioners, they may be seeing a lot more than they expect.
Well, I think that it's a good point, and I think it may go back to what member Morris Lopez asked for was some sort of current status information from the county. And it might be worth a conversation with them to say, you know, what's the workload look like in this zone?
It'd be nice to see I get that. It'd be nice to see a zoning map this just into the county.
Sure.
Just looking at within this green line right here. Obtaining each parcel, which one's Williams Act, which one is commercial, which one's agriculture.
Yeah.
That's gonna take a long time to do for somebody. And who's gonna do that?
Well, I think it's already in the GIS. It's
it's
in
very
the
straightforward.
GIS,
But
so.
no, your point's well
Then
taken.
who pulls all
It's
that?
somebody that has to do it.
Somebody
Your
has to do
point.
it. Yeah.
They don't have to do it manually anymore. They can put in the parameters in the county
Yeah,
system and
We have
it
an
coughs
MOU
it out.
with GIS. They can
It's pretty
provide
easy
that.
to
Okay,
do.
They can provide those now.
Okay.
But nevertheless, somebody's gonna have to spend an hour or 2 hours doing it and then giving it to us and so forth. So no, I've got a list of things like,
Yeah. Let me just expect.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna bill for that time, I would imagine.
yeah, okay.
So,
So, well, and that's the balance we have to strike, right? Between, you know, how much do we think it's gonna be overall so much work that we just can't manage it,
mhm.
or expensive that we can't manage it versus the potential benefit, and that's the judgment call we've got to make. So
Well, I'd like to look at this back. I know we'll be moving forward, but I look at the cost, the loss and potential income or benefit that we could have benefited if the county, if we were thinking along these lines, maybe a decade ago or less when they did the expansion at Taylor Farms, which was natural selection, which was whatever, there's like 3 main changes.
yeah,
And I don't recall, I wasn't really involved with city council or even being in the audience. But I'm pretty sure at that juncture, when they went to the county and said, we're gonna build out this organization, and you can see where it's morphed into, I consider that would have been in tier 1, and we could have asked for some help in fixing those roads and maintaining those roads, and we didn't get anything out of it.
yeah.
So I look at that as a bad example of why a
Yeah.
little bit of money now. What Scott was saying, and I hear what you're saying, I understand it, but that little bit of money that we put out now could prevent something like that happening in the future, where we lose out.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think one of the thoughts that I have along those lines, those plants out there, the county's design process doesn't ask them to hide the buildings in any way, shape, or form. It'd be nice to have berms and plantings and require them to put in lighting that doesn't light up the whole planet.
I hear them
stuff like
all,
that.
I hear them all night long, all summer.
And
Do you?
Scott, don't they-
If I roll up the windows on a hot summer night, all I hear is,
Oh, I just hear
Packing
the
fire.
music of Hardina's,
yeah,
but
no, I mean, that's how loud it is. I heard the trucks, I hear
oh, interesting.
the forklifts backing up, just the plants themselves, extremely loud.
Okay,
And there's
Yeah.
some
well, and
weird-
so these are all
weird-
mitigation.
There's some weird odor as well, right?
And that's where, that'll be fixed as soon as our sewer line goes through, so yeah.
Oh, no, that's his neighbor.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I think, and those are some of the things that to me, that this is gonna
Sure.
address.
Yeah.
So that it's not that we're saying, yeah, you can't build anything out there, but we want it to fit with the environment. We want it to fit in, where we were just coming back I was down at Eden Rift Winery over the weekend. And they had a little Christmas boutique, right? And we're driving back. And my wife commented on these gigantic homes built on the hillsides and on the hilltops. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's not what we want to see. I don't want to see
Mhm.
McMansions lining the hilltop around the city of San Juan Bautista.
Well, the county has a hillside ordinance now since
They
then,
do
so,
now,
yeah.
right? But it's, we won't, yeah, they do now, but those are the sorts of protections that we want to be on the leading edge for.
And would we use our, and see, there's another confusing part to us taking the lead. Are we using our codes and standards, or do we use the county's codes and standards and then?
Not sure.
Then we have to learn all new codes and standards. Or
Well, the
staff
planning-
does and has to explain it to us, and we have to,
Our standards would become incorporated into their conditions, so
Yeah.
they would have to meet standards to connect to the sewer, standards to connect to the
Yeah.
water. Design standards,
Yeah.
we would. do
well, that's if we annex, but I'm just saying.
No, he's,
No.
what he's saying is it becomes a condition of approval.
The county,
to
part of
meet
the
our
county
standards.
conditions for that development.
Right.
That's what we were able to do with Dassel.
Yeah.
Actually, modify and provide additional conditions based on the city's policies.
Okay.
That
One
would be
of
the mechanism for
I
that.
was gonna say, one of the things I've been doing is looking into the county general plan. And see
That
how,
sounds like fun.
how much we are so much like them as far as our general plan goes.
Mhm.
And if we have any argument or if we have any deals, I mean, it could be already written in their general plan,
Sure.
but that's the direction we need to go. So I think to look for our allies that are out there somewhere, I think I'm looking at the general plans and see how we merge in that way.
Great.
And united, doing the right thing for the county.
That seems very sensible. Exactly. Yeah. I don't
So-
think we're far off. I don't think we're. any
No, I don't
way
think you are at all.
But it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it's
So what's
just
the first
broadening
deal?
the conversation. Okay. So,
Are we gonna sit down and draw circles again? I mean, like a workshop on a table and different, I see you got your felt pens,
yeah, Dan's got his highlighters.
I've already s- I've already submitted a draft of an agreement. I've already submitted that, just thinking where we need to go with the county.
Yeah,
So I've done that. So I'm gonna go back and look at that again, and see how that's gonna change
maybe you
based
could-
on what today.
would you pass that to Don and ask him to send it to all of us?
Sure.
That would be great.
Is
Yeah,
that your
we'll just
Elizabeth?
take another look at it.
Be happy to.
Make sure Liz has.
I might revise it though.
That's fine. That's all.
Well, we
that's
haven't
all
even
good.
finished.
No, we're
this out, so
No, yeah, we're not.
might
in-
just take a break on it.
Yeah.
Because things are gonna change from
Yeah.
when you wrote it.
Sure. Do you want to show us anything? You got, looks like you got, oh, I wouldn't.
But I don't want anyone. I'm happy to. I've been working on this a little bit, but so these are just one committee person's thoughts, and they may vary wildly with other committee members. I don't know. I just thought it was a starting place for a conversation.
That's a
So
lot of pretty colors there, Dan.
Isn't it beautiful?
Artistically, I think you
Done by Walt Disney. So I can pass this around, so you can, I didn't do a whole bunch of them, I just did one. And for the areas on our doorstep, as I said, it's a euphemism. I thought any parcel that is contiguous to San Juan city limits, that should be by definition on our doorstep. Except,
So anything that touches the city limits.
anything
right?
that touches the city limits, I thought, well, I think we should care about something that happens in those areas a lot. How we express that care, whether it's lead agency or where it falls on the continuum. To be decided or discussed further, but I think it should be pretty, it sounds like it's undisputed with this group that area, this area that I've marked yellow matters a lot. The only exception to touching the city limits is going north. I went all the way to Prescott and then over to Coke and down, because I thought, well, certainly between here and Prescott kind of feels close enough to where that matters a lot also. And the orange, where the area I made orange is like that intermediate zone, and then this blue stuff is just stuff where we want to get noticed of what's happening.
Does that go with the legend?
Yeah.
Oh, can we have a hard copy of it today?
That'd be great.
I just want, because I maybe have a unique position in that I worked with county planning. I worked for this city's planning for 14 plus 15 years, and then the county for 14 years, then back in the city. So I've kind of seen it from both sides. And I can tell you that my experience anyway, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, is that the county is very, very deferential to San Juan Bautista. They like San Juan. They all come over here. Everyone over at the county says, "Oh, San Juan's so cute," you know, and the Mission and Hardines and all that stuff. So, as in the spirit of that deference, I'd be hard pressed to think that they would pursue or process anything close to us without letting us know. But as was pointed out earlier, is that always going to be true? Who knows? What if the personalities change? Who knows? Do we want a memorial, even though they've been deferential in the past? Do we want to memorialize that? I mean, a follow-up question would be, well, if they're doing that anyway, that they probably would agree to something in writing, just to agree to formalize that which they've been doing for a long time anyway. Yeah, we'll let you guys know. We'll give you notice. Will you give us notice as soon as you get an application? Sure. So I don't think a lot of the stuff is going to be a tough sell. By the way, talking about something that's happening that I didn't know about, I don't know if you guys do, but I think it would be I don't know if it's in our planning area. I just heard yesterday that there's a big mining application going on 156 and 101. Did you know about that? Have you seen the application? It's Stevens Creek Quarry.
Yeah.
Is our city gonna be able to comment on that at all, or do we care?
I think that's an existing quarry.
It's an expansion of an existing quarry. We received notice. I don't know that we responded.
All right. So that might be an example of something that's happening with the county. Then the question is, all right, does San Juan care about that? And if you do, how are we gonna?
It's actually on the other side.
Is it on the other side?
Yeah.
What is that? Right up
It's in the Aromas Fire District. It's on the other side.
So anyway, these are,
Across the one.
there's just kind of a visual expression of what we've been talking about. Of immediate concern, moderate concern, and then kind of distant concern.
Would the committee like to invite the county to the next meeting? To discuss proposed projects that are out there? We've done that with city council and it was really helpful.
Sounds like a good idea. What do you think?
Who would? Yeah.
Abraham Prado.
Oh.
Abraham.
Who would that be?
He's the director, I believe, planning director, Abraham Prado.
Yeah, he's the director of planning.
And
Steve's the RMA director.
I'm asking him.
Oh,
That's a good idea.
It's a good idea to-
David?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that
Sure.
you don't have to speculate.
Right.
Yeah. I like the colors.
I understand it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then as
That's
to,
the legends.
Yeah. I did make enough copies of these notes. I made these notes, just again, ideas. People are free to completely disagree with this, throw it away, I don't care. But they're just my thoughts on what could happen in each of those.
You said you have enough.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it deal codes?
No. This is just when someone says, okay, that's a nice green line, what happens inside that line? And we say, well, that's how close, it depends how close it is to the city. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, if it's real close, i.e. yellow, then we want to be able to do
Good.
this stuff.
Can you copy this?
Thank you, John. Dan?
Huh?
Please.
So you'll see the yellow stuff that's right up against our city limits.
It's even color coded.
Yeah, I had those pins out, so I thought, what the heck? Yellow stuff gives us the highest level of involvement. Orange is still some involvement, and then blue is basically notice to us and an opportunity for us to provide comment to county planning. That would be then reflected in their staff report, etc.
Good, yeah.
Maybe even I like Don, I like your idea about proposed additions to conditions of approval. That could be, that could constitute the comment on an application. I think one of these, I think I say, oh yeah, on the third tier, send us a copy of your staff report, which would be the proposed resolution and conditions of approval. Then we can see if they're deficient or not, or if we have anything to add or not, send that back under that third tier.
Yeah, and then David Mack provided that review for the Dassel example.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So again, those are just some of my thoughts.
A question. I'm sitting here thinking that we are an advisory committee. So we would advise, once we work on the specifics of what we're doing, it goes to the planning commission. And from there, that goes to the city council. So since the planning commission is involved directly in all things related to zoning planning projects that have been permitted, how involved would we want them to be even at this juncture, or do we just give them our product and then they can tweak it?
I'm gonna
Yeah.
comment on that if you don't
I
mind.
was kind of thinking.
Well, we have 2 planning commissioners on the committee and 1 former planning commissioner on this committee.
Right.
So I personally don't feel like we have to go bounce it back off the planning commission very much. I don't think there's any reason why the 2 planning commissioners can't make a report back to their planning commission.
What do you mean as to what this committee does?
Exactly
Oh, so this,
what
this
Yeah.
committee would do a recommendation to the planning commission, who would, no, I think it should just go straight to council.
Yeah,
Yeah, getting their input, because that is in their wheelhouse is planning and
sure.
zoning use and whatnot, so. And you two are.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
practically you're
why-
talking about Jose, Tony and Ida, who I think tonight will be our first meeting.
What's that?
Are we gonna try to alleviate work there?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of
The load
the,
is getting heavy. so,
yeah. Yeah, no,
What needs to be done, so
yeah,
let's find ways.
I feel like-
Lighter.
yeah, I feel like we're on the right track. I think this is great.
That's a good idea.
Dan, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I would ask that everybody review this,
Okay.
flesh it out as you see fit. Alter, change, tweak, whatever. And if there's some alternative approach that seems logical or makes more sense to you, then that would also, we want to bring that forward for the next meeting. But I would say unless we have more questions or deliberation, I'd say we've maybe wrapped up what we need to discuss on this particular topic, yes? You feeling comfortable taking this back?
Yes.
Okay, Scott, you're ready
Yeah,
to move on?
yeah, I like the fact that we have,
Oh, we can do that.
I'm just trying to let them know.
yeah, I like, and what Dan put together. This is something I was thinking about too, when the county said, when county comes and says, well, what do you want? And
Yeah.
we just sit there and now at least we have,
Right,
the talking points. This is
right,
the concerns and questions. So yeah,
Right.
that's huge.
right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
What's that?
we're gonna definitely get somebody from the county here next.
Well, we're gonna,
Next time, I think.
yeah, go ahead.
Just from my own feelings, is that let's get our ducks in a row. So that when they do come, we say, welcome, here's what we want to tell you. I don't think we're there yet. I think we still need to deliberate and kind of massage this thing. When I just sat down at my computer and prepared this stuff, these were supposed to be like conversation starters for us. What do you guys think? As been pointed out, first here, I've got us being the lead agency, working through a vendor to process something to minimize any extra amount of work. But maybe that's something the committee says, that's a little bit too much. Let's just do this instead. So these are supposed to be, like I said, to facilitate a conversation, kind of steer it and provide structure to a conversation.
I think the request was for someone from the county to address some of the questions that came up, not necessarily zoning, a presentation on zoning, Williamson Act, the proposed development, and potentially to give us a sense of workload within the area. And I think that was the intent for the person coming from the county at the next meeting, not necessarily to get into the nuts and bolts of this, because I agree with you.
That's fine, but you know, zoning you can look up on the internet, and Williamson Act you can find out on the internet too, and you can petition to get out of the Williamson Act. You go to do that, you go to the Williamson Act committee. So I mean, a lot of it, I would be interested in what Abraham has to say about anything he knows of. That doesn't really hit the presses as far as pending applications, because a lot of times developers will go in. I'm sure I think it happens here in San Juan too. They'll come in and say, "Hey, I'm Joe Schmo. I'm from Los Angeles, and I'm thinking about this piece over here. And what do you think?" So a lot of times, guys like Abraham and Ariel and the planners in the county, they'll kind of know something that's going on, but it hasn't really risen to the level that it shows up in Bonita Link.
Sure.
Sure. And that kind of anecdotal information is kind of interesting. So we can certainly ask Abraham about that. But as far as what's zoned what, I kind of already know what's zoned what. And if I don't, I can just look it up.
Okay.
I think I like it, even though we can probably access it ourselves, but that takes more time on us, and not all of us have, the wherewithal to look that stuff up. But I think it just kind of starts a dialogue that we are serious and we want to have a relationship with the county, and just sort of opens the door for that sort of relationship.
Totally. But Jackie, what are you going to ask him? Please tell us.
Oh, I'm not gonna ask them. I want them to talk to us and tell us.
But is the idea though that they will come here and tell us whether this is AR, AP, rural, every single parcel?
Starting the dialogue and letting them be who we are, and that we are serious about doing this, because we've been kind of just flapping in the wind with this huge unapproved SOI that's out there. It's just been a free for all.
Do we any more discussion on the planning area and related?
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mr. City Manager, I meant to ask you at the opening, the SOI, has it been submitted to LAFCO?
No, it's to be submitted with a community plan that needs to be updated. So that's the point of the EMC proposal.
So
Is to change our community plan to be an infill framework rather than one that included the possibility of annexing land to the south. So then we have a narrative to go with the map, to go with our application. That better describes our MSR that needs to be drafted and so forth, because it talks about how we would rely on our existing infrastructure. So it would help to justify first to HCD, housing and community development, that we have the capacity within an infill model to meet ARENA. And then also we have the infrastructure capacity to manage that MSR that needs to go with the application of LAFCO. So and this is just a quick project. It is $100,000, but that'll be offset with a little bit of the grant money that's left from HCD. So I had planned to take that forward with the committee's approval to the council on the 19th as a consent item, just an update.
That's, and you're referring to the report that's in our.
So just if I heard you correctly, so this proposed work can be viewed as necessary or ancillary to the LAFCO application.
Yeah, it comes to the narrative for it.
I see. And then this is kind of probably more relevant to Jackie and Scott, but is there budget left on the EMC?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
The council, we had an initiative, an SOI UGB initiative. So there was $229,000 in there. So although there's only 10,000 left on the grant, there's still close to over $100,000 left in the general fund contribution
Mm.
So that's all part of the budget, and happy to share the draft staff. Well, there's not so much draft anymore. We have to publish our agenda pretty soon, so. So I hope you approve it. I don't have to amend that staff report.
Do we need to, is there public comment out there? Do we need before?
Yeah, good point. Why don't we do that right now? Can we take any public comment on the planning area?
And I see that EMC is also on the.
If anybody in Zoom wishes to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Seeing no hands raised, Chair.
Okay. So Don, this is all discussion. We don't really, there's no vote on this infill amend plan. This document is not looking for any approval from us, is it?
Not necessarily. I think I'm hoping to just get your general feedback and
Okay.
and by consensus, so you're okay moving this forward to the council.
Okay, thank you.
I think you said the magic words when you said that this is the work, the deliverable by EMC under this proposal is going to be tantamount to having the new SOI processed by LAFCO.
Yeah, that seems that.
That's all I needed.
Yeah.
That's all I needed to hear. Okay, then. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, certainly a lot of concern probably amongst our committee that SOI get to LAFCO as quickly as possible.
Right, and not be tangled up in
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a separate, it's distinct from,
Yeah.
okay.
distinct application.
Okay, so any public comment on the San Juan Bautista community plan, infill framework and targeted general plan amendment?
I would just request if City Manager Don Reynolds, if you could just give like for the audience, I mean, I know most of us here know about it. We were in some of those meetings, just like briefly, if you can just tell the audience and anyone else listening what the intent of this is, and just briefly what we're moving from the previous community plan to what we want to present now.
Sure, and EMC is available to fill in the blanks. You might recall in 2022, we had a map that included several acres south of the city out towards the cement plant. The original UGB map was a lot larger than the one just revised. So the community plan was drawn up using the grant funds that had to be expended by that September. So we had the last meeting in June that was a memorable meeting that I was not at the Veterans Hall. From that, we started out reaching out with letters and doing a letter campaign to property owners in the fall of 2022. So we came up with a more concise sphere of influence in 2023, and we did not modify the plan from 2022. So the map is out ahead of the plan now, and the idea is to just do this quick study and bring the map into an infill focus, the same as our SOI, as our political boundaries. So with that change, it's pretty dramatic, and it requires a different concentration. Is the zoning and at 70 Mucklemy at 24 units per acre, is that high enough now to meet the arena numbers and to meet our housing development goals? So with that, we'll be happy to defer if the committee would like to hear from EMC and what their take on their scope is. That would be cool.
Sorry, Dan, you had a question?
Yeah. And from EMC, we have who? Is that you, Mr. Groves?
No, I don't think so.
No?
There might be more than one person.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, good afternoon. This is Zane Mortensen with EMC Planning Group, and I also have Michael Groves with me right now.
Wow. Fantastic. Michael, you probably are aware of the fact the Planning Commission just got done doing the housing element update.
Say that again now.
The San Juan Planning Commission just,
The volume from your guys' microphones is just not very good, so if you guys could speak up, that'd be great.
how about now?
A little bit better. Scream at me. Come on, Dan.
No, there was just a simple question that when we did when the San Juan Planning Commission did the housing element update, what was shown to us was a pretty neat analysis done. I think it's from an aerial standpoint, an aerial platform. It has an acronym. Tony Correa knew all about it from his vineyard work. Am I ringing any bells yet? ARC or RCS or something like that? Don, do you know what I'm talking about? That looked at open lots for infill. And it was that analysis that was used, or that those pictures or that kind of data was used in order to determine infill opportunities for the housing element.
So I'm aware of the study and the table, but I don't recall the acronym.
Well, and who cares what the acronym is? I guess my question simply is whether EMC is going to be, presumably they have access to all of that stuff that we did. Okay, great. That was the only question I had.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll need to use all the existing documentation and, I mean, the whole infill strategy has to be partially based on this housing element that you're processing at this point with HCD. So it's important to incorporate those findings into the work we do as an infill strategy.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Michael.
Anyone else at the table here? Looks like we're good. Okay, from Zoom land, any public comment, questions?
If anybody in Zoom wishes to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so the urban growth boundary. I think I'm watching the clock here. We want to. I don't think we want to. We don't want to go hard up against the planning commission meeting, right? We want to give you guys a break, along with staff. Would be probably appreciated. One of the things that we discussed previously was identifying changes that need to be made within the general plan. I know Brian Fouch spent some time on that, and there's some feedback on that in some of the packets that we've seen for the city council. So I'll go back and take a look through that and maybe review that with you, Don, briefly.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, he has about 7 pages that we've used as an attachment to the draft report for this item. So
great.
We'll make sure the committee gets a copy of that.
Okay, maybe you and I could sit down and look at it briefly. Jackie, you had, I believe, my recollection is, Jackie, that you volunteered to go through the general plan and look for some of this stuff.
I hereby second that motion.
And perhaps a more reasonable way to start is to take Brian's work product and use that as a starting point, and then perhaps look for elsewhere where that just make sure that we don't miss anything. And I gather that is part of what will be related to some of EMC's work as well. So they'll be doing some of that as well. We just want to make sure we're not missing anything.
So that in general, I'm assuming all the language that's in the current general plan that gives reference to South San Juan development on the south side of the Alameda, that would be amended to exclude that and now talk about infill on this side of the Alameda.
Yeah, I think really what we're looking for is just to identify any items, anything in the general plan that would be in conflict with what we've created as work product from the committee. So it's not, we're not looking for you at this point to rewrite it, just simply to identify it and bring it back. Exactly, right.
I got a bunch.
Well, and easier than that is you'll just say, oh, there's policy land use L-23.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that needs to be updated. I agree.
Yeah, and then we can start hopefully come up with a plan for addressing those, probably with EMC, and then sort of see where we can support that process as a group.
When would you like for this process to begin?
Next Friday?
Tuesday?
Yeah.
I think it's Tuesday.
Are you serious?
No, I meant finish by next Friday. No, I think
Christmas.
why don't you see what you can do and come back with whatever progress you've made to our next meeting, and we'll just take it from there. Is that reasonable?
I think so, but I
Yeah.
think we'll have to meet with Dawn.
Sure.
To go over exactly the task at hand, so that I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, and I think we're probably gonna have to have multiple eyes on it, but if you can take a first pass, that would be, I think that would be very
That'd be
helpful.
awesome, Jackie.
You'll get that document tomorrow, so it could happen the first week in January or whatever you wanna do.
I think I might.
No
have
worries.
one there, I'm not sure, but I'll check first before you go and have to. print them out.
Well, I mean, the 7-page summary
Oh.
quote, yeah.
from Brian then.
We've, and I think, Dan has spent some time working on the ordinance
Yeah,
and then quickly came to the realization that it was
well,
encompassed largely what we've just described as
that's right. I was just-
changes to the general plan in Sonoma, not necessarily things that we would be actionable for an ordinance for us. And so we probably need to say, just
Or they
take
would.
another look at it.
Or they would. What I was gonna say is that, you know, your hard work, and by the way, we'll keep a candle lit at the mission for you while your work's underway. But it's gonna be important because it'll guide the actual drafting of the general plan amendment, I think, when that time comes. But then also, as Chris alluded to, the ordinance itself, that we have seen other jurisdictions ordinance, and it says the general plan is hereby amended as follows. Like Don said, land use planning, section 2, you know, it all has that in the ordinance. So I got to that part and I thought, holy smokes, we don't know what, I got stuck. How can I go forward with that? We don't know. So until this work gets done, I think I see that as a prerequisite to having the ordinance completed. If the intent of the ordinance is to effectuate those changes, to memorialize or codify those changes, you know what I mean?
Okay, so does that seem, I think that's how we need to proceed on the UGB ordinance. Unless anybody has any other comments or concerns or questions. Does that seem reasonable?
David, you want to be my assistant?
Oh, that's true. David's.
I knew you were gonna ask.
Maybe you
So,
guys
yeah,
split it.
so give me direction when you get a chance. I'll be happy to help.
The ad hoc committee of the ad hoc committee.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. And maybe you guys could divide,
Right.
because that general plan, you know, it's like that.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Gavin. He has that look on his face.
I've already been buried in COG stuff this month.
Yeah,
So-
well, that's right, yeah. God,
So,
Yeah,
yeah, so
I-
just tell me
okay.
where I can help and I'll help.
Okay, well, I feel like we've
A true volunteer, I'm delegating already.
run on. Smart. Okay, any other questions or comments on the UGB? No, anything further on the urban growth boundary at this point? Maybe we can take public comment, or Don, did you have anything you want to add, or any questions or concerns?
No, I think we're done.
Okay. Can we take public comment on the urban growth boundary then?
If anybody in Zoom wishes to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Chair.
Thank you very much. And so what would be, let's see. The third, when do we meet? We meet on the fourth Tuesday, which would be the 23rd of January. Third, okay, good. I will be in town.
I think so.
Hopefully everybody else will too.
Look in February.
Yeah, we're not gonna come up against the football.
It doesn't matter. The Raiders are gonna be in there. Oh, yeah.
Okay, do I have
When
a,
are we talking?
the 23rd of January will be our next meeting,
Hopefully we'll be there.
and what do we normally meet at 4 p.m.? 4 p.m. on the 23rd will be our next regular meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
Oh.
Pardon me?
Did you open it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, then doesn't it butt up against the city limit of Salinas as well? Yeah, yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, they are.
Really? Are they?
They are, yeah.